it's no different than building. If you're going to do construction or whatever, you try to go to a family member. Hey, how do I build an apartment building?
YouTube University.
Exactly.
All right, guys, we got to get back on track. We got to get back
sure.
on track. Love it. Let's talk about communication, Larry. Obviously, running for mayor of San Diego, you know, a very large city, my favorite city in the world, born and raised here. I've been in 45 countries. I absolutely love this city. I'm on a group chat with a bunch of guys. You know, back when we lived in San Diego, this city is a part of me. So when you communicate, how do you put that out, Larry? Like, you're obviously on social media. You're active on social media. We're going to post all of his social media links in the description for the podcast. You guys check Larry Turner out. But you're going to a lot of public events. You're speaking. What is your style of communication? Obviously, you carry yourself. You are a military man and a police force, but you also have you seem fun, like you're chill. But how do you present yourself? How do you communicate with the public?
Yeah, it's very different than politicians do. I'm just a regular guy, and I am fun. One thing that me and my campaign manager have in common, we actually were...
Shout out, Millie.
Yeah. We're talking about what our dream job would have been, and I said something about being a writer for Saturday Night Live, and she said the same thing, so it was kind of funny. I guess that's why we get along. But yeah, it's just talking to people as somebody trying to solve the problem and be their employee, not talking down to them. We're all in this mess together. And so I'm the one that volunteered to kind of jump on the grenade here and do this, but I can't do it without your expertise in whatever it is, if it's ADUs or it's in medicine for the homeless or whatever it might be, you know. And so I'm gathering at all the meetings. I'm recruiting also at almost every meeting I go to. I get someone who in the audience who's asking some specific questions about an area that I know I need some more expertise on that. And hey, come join us, you know, not just for the campaign to get elected, but after we win. I mean, just yesterday, somebody was telling me about some new water billing kind of a thing and really wanted me to do that. I'm like, dude, I got crises going on in the city. You come, you know all about it. You join me, you do it. You know, I'll empower you to make that change with the water billing. So I'm out there recruiting too. So it's a conversation. It's me hearing from them about the problems in the neighborhood and then being honest that if I don't have the answer, I'm just talking around because I don't have the answer. I say, man, that's first heard. I didn't know about that. Can we get together for coffee and talk about that, you know,
Jonathan,
after the meeting?
I'm going to tell you right now, this is one of the reasons when I first met Larry, when we did our first podcast, I want to say it's maybe 5 months ago, maybe 6 months ago, when you first were coming out for running. But I'll tell you this much, as from a military aspect, as a military leader, because, you know, you were Lieutenant Commander?
Lieutenant Colonel.
Lieutenant Colonel.
On the Marine side. Yeah.
Marine side. So one of the biggest things that I've seen in terms of leadership is that they have the ability to allow people to step up to lead. So if he says, hey, you know what, I need you guys to take the hill. This is what we need to do. How it gets done is up to the next person below him. That person will say, hey guys, let's come together. Let's figure out a game plan to take this hill. So there's no level of micromanagement in that aspect. It's just like, hey, I just need the ball moved over here. How you get that ball moved is up to the team to make that happen. And that's when I see very different in the way Larry's approach is in many of the things. Like what he's just saying right now, I'm like, that's exactly right.
Well, you can't micromanage and scale. You can't operate effectively at scale by micromanaging.
You can't, but
I think
there's a certain level of humility though.
You need to whiteboard with the team. Obviously, if you're in leadership, they need to be running by the course of action with you, right? You need to be signing off on that stuff.
Yeah.
And as you build your team and they gain more trust, there are less things you hopefully need to sign off on, because then it allows you to do more and them to do more because they're empowered, etc. But again, that comes with building teams, that comes with recruiting, that comes with vetting and time, right? Because someone can start out really good too and then end up being a dirtbag.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's happened to me. I've recruited
all the time.
hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of employees. They come in hot, they come in on fire, and then, 2-3 weeks, and it's like, okay, I need to get better. I'm always looking at myself. How could I have been a better leader? Was it something a part of our system, our culture, right? But at the end of the day, some guys are going to burn out. Some guys are going to fizzle out. Some girls aren't going to make it, right? But it takes time to essentially filter those diamonds out of the rough. So you got to always be recruiting. I talk about that all the time.
Do you see people leaning in, like when you involve them, like the example you just gave? Do people typically lean in, or do they shy away and say, no, you solved it?
Question.
I just wanted to bring that up.
My rough number would be like 50-50.
50-50.
And 50 will say, yeah, I'd love to do that. And 50 will be like, well, I'm busy and I just kind of expect you to do it, And I know that 50 that said they'd help, some of them it's more like help is they just want to meet to give me more details for me to, they'll help by giving me, I want you to lead that team. I mean, that's what I'm trying to, I want you to take on. I understand that, people have their lives, but what I find is the people that I go to the most, and it's not, there's no ageism thing, but I find the people who, have experienced more, they just usually are older. I've got a lot of older folks that are, assisting me in these areas of their expertise, and maybe they're retired already. Mm-hmm. And then the cool thing is that when they're retired, they got more time on their hands. Yeah. So, and their kids are out of the house. They're not like raising their kids still like I am, or, starting their career and hustling and trying to make the 100,000 a year in the, phone calls. They're done, and they've got the nice house now, and they have that time to share. So you remember the term graybeards? Mm-hmm. It was the old retired admirals and generals. They would kind of get hired back to be like a mentor or advisor to a new general, because you got everybody around the table. It was a bunch of yes men. Just, oh yes, you're very funny, sir. You're very handsome, sir. Everything is just.
You got the old guys like that shit wasn't funny.
Well, right. That's a really good point. We call it like the 11th man.
Yeah.
Right. So you get like the 11th man.
Yeah.
You know what the 11th man concept is?
I was just talking about this with a guy during an interview earlier.
Here, I'll let him explain.
Is it like the 6th man in sports, or the 13th man in?
Oh, you got to have somebody that says no, that disagrees with you. And I've always done that. I said, look, guys, somebody around this table has got to disagree with this point. Otherwise, when he's fired, and we can get somebody else in the room. You got to have somebody that's challenging you. And even if they don't change your mind on it, it sharpens your perspective of your own 100%. Point of view. Because they challenge, steel sharpens steel. So I want a really strong argument against this. And maybe it makes me change my mind. Yeah, we need to scrap our idea. Your idea is better. So I got to have people in the room.
Best idea wins, right? No ego.
Right. Yeah. And I've told them, I'm probably going to fire them. So don't tell them that. But somebody's going to get fired. I need somebody at the table who's going to disagree against this issue. So one of you needs to go do the research. Even if you don't believe it, you got to fight that argument on the other side. So that's what, I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And
Okay, let's move to understanding. I did kind of preface with that question, though. So looking back, I said, would you have done it differently? Even getting into the Marine Corps, getting into the police force, would you have tried to potentially fast track? Or was there something else in your career, Larry, that you wish you had more understanding of, that you have now as an adult, a father, a husband, a servant of the community, that you did back then, or you didn't know back then?
No, I honestly, I'm living like a dream life. I really am. The career I had in the Marine Corps, there were some jobs that would have had this, one, and that, but man, everything just went great. Kind of wish I could have deployed a little more here or there. I could have, but man, overall, I count my blessings. I had a great career. And then this thing with the police department, since then, I've just had a blast. And yeah, would I rather been on this task force, or been, I was on the SWAT team, but I was on the part-time SWAT team, but I like that for one reason, but would have been cool to go over and be a sniper and do some other. Yeah, but I give my life like an A+, maybe even, I wouldn't change a whole lot. There's relationship stuff I would have, I wish I would have helped kept that, made this relationship work, or, I feel bad about those kind of things, but career-wise, no, I'm super blessed. And even now, having this opportunity to fix the city, it's a blessing for all of us. It's not really a personal blessing. I know it's going to be 8 years of just nonstop, having the coffee pot on and working all the time for 8 years and really wearing myself out. It's not like it's for fun or because I ever wanted that job. I really didn't. And but I'm excited about it.
What struck you? What was the moment in time where you said, you know what, I'm putting my name in it?
Yeah, it was the uncovering of more corruption. That's the truth. So I know people don't like me using the corruption word, but man, there's corruption here. It's so bad. You think like Chicago and New York and stuff. It's really bad in San Diego. And I learned more and more about it.
Corruption is not like the traditional sense that people think. It's more like
it's pay to play.
Pay to play.
So when we don't have a good infrastructure, and we can't balance our budget, and you go back and look at the whys are because donors to a political person, in this case the mayor, led to decisions that broke us financially and broke our road and broke our, it really goes back to that. So there will be.
Well, I know the city does have some serious problems financially, fiscally.
Right.
Yeah, economically actually was the word I was looking for. But yeah, I don't want to get into that yet. We have to stay on track. Okay, We're going to have space for those types of questions. S, to what, Larry, do you attribute your success thus far in your life? Sort of one thing that you would point out that, hey, this thing I can always hang my hat on. It's what I attribute my success to today.
Yeah, it's my upbringing. probably everybody says that, right? But my parents were just great at keeping my nose clean and raising a good kid. I was kind of nerdy like that. And, I wasn't drinking, I wasn't smoking, none of that. It was just about, just be a good person. And follow the rules and work hard and be honest and integrity and all that stuff. That's the truth. So
love that.
That's really all it came down to.
I love that. All right, cool. Let's move into probably the most difficult sometimes portion of the podcast, which is, we learn a lot in life through failure. And I feel like our culture today is, just win, 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 win all the time. This is flashy. This is hot. This is sexy. Do this, do that. This guru says this guru says that. And no guru talks about, dude, this is when I took it on the chin. This is when I took it on the gut. This is when, I said something that made someone I care about really upset. These are the losses that I've taken. We talked about mentorship a little bit. We talk about mentorship a lot on this podcast. So if you're comfortable, share something with us that was a loss in your life, Larry. It could be personal, it could be relationship, it could be financial, it could be, whatever you feel comfortable sharing, and what it felt like then when, your world was caving in on you, and then how you walked through it, and now how you look at it in, as time has passed, and kind of how that has transitioned.
Yeah. Well, if I was a politician, I wouldn't tell you this story. But the truth is, going through a divorce toward the end of my Marine Corps career, that was really hard. I have older kids from, that marriage, and that's been, that was just like really a knife twisted in the gut, and just never felt that bad in my life. I mean, all the painful physical things and other tough times going through and dangerous situations and all that around. That was really rough, especially how the kids took it, and, just constantly looking back on how some things could have been done differently, but everything happens for a reason. So, I've gone on and things have been great, but that was probably the lowest point in my life, I think.
So it was very rough going through the divorce, and then now looking back on it, kind of how do you view it? Obviously you are remarried now, you have, additional children and a different situation going.
Yeah.
How do you look back on that now?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing you can go back and change, in time, but you can learn from things. And, on the kid side of it, being a younger dad versus an older dad now, man, it's a huge difference I think I'm a much better dad now. I think I was a pretty good dad as a young guy, but
I'm 42, bro, and these kids wear you out, dude. I'm telling you right now.
It keeps me fit. It keeps me young.
They like the sound of their voice more. These kids, dude, they are something else, bro. They are something else.
Sugar, bro. Sugar.
Yeah.
It's the sugar, dude. Don't give them the sugar, bro.
Give them the sugar.
On you, dude.
Grandmas and grandpas are the worst at that.
The fact that you brought that up. So one of the things that we do with the shooting tournament with the SEALs is guys that transition from active duty to the civilian world. And that transition is so difficult. And we do see a lot of people that when they get out, they go through the divorce because they're having to relearn their spouse.
Yeah.
So that's number one.
Yeah.
Loss of the previous identity, which a lot of people, they don't have enough humility to identify that. So now your old you is now over. The Marine guy is now done. Now you're at home trying to figure your thing out.
Yeah.
Right. And then the other is that when you're in a particular environment, high testosterone, high drive, all that, and then you go back home and it's a completely different environment.
Yeah.
I can't say it sedates someone, but it starts putting you into a state of depression, and you feel like you're alone in a restaurant, everybody around, but you can disappear at a moment.
Dude, I mean, the bottom line for me is, right, relationships in general are tough.
But the thing is,
they require work. Relationships require work. They require commitment. Marriage, obviously, is a very important relationship. It requires work. I think to your point, we talked about this before on your pod.
Yeah.
When you are sort of in that lane all day, high sort of male-driven, mission-driven,
Yes.
kind of hurrah, and then you go home, sometimes those...
That's the thing though, bro. This is one of the hardest things for typical civilians to understand, is that you're not going home. You're gone for 6-8 months at a time. And then to come home and have to rekindle a relationship that you maybe have had a phone call in a couple months, right? And then you're in a completely different world altogether, 100%. So like when I have friends that are police officers, I kind of feel for those guys, because that world that they operate in versus what their wives would ever want to know is such a big disconnect, because you don't want them to worry about that. But when you're in the military and you have this identity and you come home to a completely brand new identity, That's why I wanted to ask you. So when that transition happened, do you feel like that was the biggest part?
Not the retirement part. I believe it or not, I was probably that 1% who was totally fine with leaving that work. But also because I was going into law enforcement, still had that camaraderie and, you know, the challenges and all that kind of stuff. Different jobs, but still had that kind of a rush, you know, of when you're working 20 hours and you're doing all these operations and that kind of stuff. But, you know, those times you're talking about when you came back from a deployment, oh yeah. You know what captured it great was in those two movies. One was the EOD guy, the Army one, the Hurt Locker.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it shows him almost toward the very end. He comes home and he's just pushing the shopping cart around. The wife's telling him to go get the cereal, and he's looking at the cereal aisle, and it's just like, oh my God, the stuff I was just doing like a week ago.
Right.
It was people were dying, living, or, you know, very serious decisions you were making.
Right.
And now it's, you know, which cereal do you get? That whoever put that scene into that movie, that was powerful. And then also with American Sniper.
Yep.
You know, he's at the Jiffy Lube.
Yep.
And it's just kind of like, what, you know, yeah, you know, you don't know what's going on in his mind, but you just know it's kind of like that, man, I just came from this. And so not so much my retirement from the military, but the coming back from some things where what you were doing, nobody would even believe you what you were doing. So I wouldn't even tell people, not because I was internalizing it, didn't want to, it was just, you wouldn't believe me. I mean, you would just think I'm making stuff up.
Right.
So I don't even have to exaggerate some of the things. But if I told you, and I even told some close friends of mine, and they're like, yeah, right. That was, come on, man.
Well, the way I've heard it too, I have a lot of friends that are military, a lot of friends that, you know, have been in special forces, that have been SWAT teams in, you know, San Jose, etc. It is still a job though, right? And though you are in very precarious situations, though you have missions to accomplish, though there is danger and oftentimes very high stakes, it's still a job. Now, being able to separate that job from when you get home, I think there's counseling for that stuff too and stuff like that as well, right, Ant?
There is and there isn't.
Because it's a thing.
Yes, but okay, so for like what we're trying to explain right now, and this is kind of hard for the audience to kind of understand, is that what if I sent you to climb Mount Rushmore, climb a mountain?
We got to train.
Well, you got to train, prepare, do your whole nine, right? And yesterday you were on the top of Mount Everest, okay, dealing with that. And today you're like at the beach. Two different complete worlds.
Right, but Larry had said that transition was relatively easy for him. Like it wasn't something that was daunting or
yeah, to
difficult.
leaving the career for another career wasn't, but I was talking about the deployment. So like the going to Mount Rushmore, or not Mount Rushmore,
Mount Everest.
Mount Everest.
But I went to Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
Me too,
but,
man.
Yeah.
Stoked.
Oh, right, man. Yeah, you know, and you put in all that time, and you were there at the base camp for a long, you know, and you did, and then you come back and you're just, you know, hanging out at Denny's. You know, it's like I was
Fifth to
just
first year.
Oh yeah, yeah. Totally.
All right, changing topics. We got to get into this election because this thing is coming down to the wire.
Yeah.
The election at the federal level for the White House is really, really starting to heat up. I mean, we are right around the corner, guys. We have Congress hanging on the balance between, you know, red and blue. So we have Todd Gloria, who's the incumbent right now, running against Larry Turner, who obviously we have here. So I want to talk about some things that you have seen, kind of what led you to wanting to become the mayor of San Diego. You know, mainly about, obviously we've seen the amount of homeless grow in this city tremendously. Even from when I was coming up, I used to work downtown in San Diego. You know, there's always been sort of homeless people in San Diego. Yeah. I think generally, you know, you just accept that in a large city. I would say generally that there are going to be some homeless people. Now, there are some cities like Denver and some other places I've been where there are not, but generally there are some. Obviously, we are a far cry from Los Angeles, but it has gotten worse. It's gotten progressively worse.
Yeah.
And I think anyone in San Diego would not deny that. So talk about some issues, Larry, that have led you to do and take the steps that you're taking in trying to become the mayor of San Diego.
Yeah, the biggest one was humans dying on the sidewalk and being treated not like people. So in my work, you know, I was around that a lot. And whatever you thought about the last mayor, we did see double-digit decreases every year while he was mayor. He had a plan that worked. And
you're talking about Kevin Faulconer, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. And I, you know, again, whether you're a fan of his or not, it's just a math thing. And I was working in the police department like I am now, and in the worst areas. I was down at the epicenter of it. So again, it's not I don't have an expectation that we end homelessness, but there's a crisis level that is right now, we're probably 5 times higher than what the current system of like the Father Joe's and the Alpha Projects and Salvation Army can handle. It's way over that. And so we got to get it down to back to that at least.
And
I would like it to be zero.
How much is the budget a concern when it comes to from the federal level all the way through Sacramento down to San Diego? How much of that is a concern? Do you feel like there's been some waste throughout this process in programs, et cetera? And then how do you feel like that you'd be able to tackle this problem a little bit different?
Yeah, so the money flows into the county, and it's from the county has to give it to us. On the federal and the state stuff, right? So the county has been just absent on this issue. They haven't had any success at all, and they haven't really given the money down to the cities. They started doing it a little while back, but it's not all of it. But I view it like if the city had an earthquake, devastating one, buildings crumbled, and we're not just going to sit around and wait for the guy whose job it is. The National Guard gets here and FEMA and Red Cross. They ain't showing up, man. We're doing it. So
yeah, it's like your mantra. You got to get it. You got to get in there and make it happen.
That's a good question that you had asked, because now watching what's happening in North Carolina with all the flooding, right? And I've heard other mayors just say, "Get out of the city," and that's really all they're kind of like putting that word out there, and they're leaving it to FEMA to take care of everything. Yeah. And now we're watching a huge citizen response because you're seeing such a gap from what they perceived the government was going to provide to what's actually happening.
Yeah, I think that the understanding of the flaws in government at all levels is more understood now with 24-hour news and everybody videotaping it. You see the truth that it's just not this amazing government that can do anything, like in the movies. There's a meteor coming to Earth. Well, the government will solve this and nuke it out of space, right? I mean, it's just average people out there with their rowboats saving people, right? We've seen that a number of times. But here, it is the city's problem, but it's not the city's responsibility. We don't get the funding for it, but we're going to do it. So it's just kind of holding people. When you talked about the budget side of it, our city has been spending of our own budget. We've had a huge increase. We started off, I think, the first year, he was just in the last 4 years. It's gone from about a little under 10 million a year, I think it was 8 or 7, towards 200 and some million dollars a year now. Wow. But the problem has doubled. Even their number is that it's gone up 42 point something percent. That's their number.
Yeah, my thing about that too, Larry, is always like who's tracking where the money is going? And then
nobody.
The programs that they essentially come up with, this is going to be a fixer for this. If they don't work, is that just lost revenue? Is it just an L?
Yeah, it's gone. Poof. It's gone. So check it out. They've also, just in homelessness, the city in homelessness spending cannot account for 20 million. They don't know where 20 million of it went. Like, it's not like, they invested it in something that didn't work. Like, you lost it by investing in the wrong thing. They can't find where it went. So we've just 20 million, poof. Like, they have no idea where it went. And I didn't just show that. I mean, it's bigger at the state level. I think it was somewhere around like 15 or 20 billion that they can't account for on homelessness spending. It's an industry. There are friends of these elected officials who run nonprofits, who their nonprofits get a lot of money, and there is no accountability of just success. Like, there's no metrics of success. There's no definition of what success is. Yeah. It's just, here's tens of millions, go do good.
Yeah, and money is a very, very motivating incentive. It's a factor, and it's the great incentive. So to your point, when you have, I'm not making any accusations, but when you have an incentive to keep your job by doing a job, and you're making a couple $100,000 a year, but if you do your job well, then you work yourself out of a job.
Right.
That is a conflict of interest by any means. I know in business, when I look at that, I say, we got a problem here. If this guy's going to do an inspection on this house, and he's like, if I find nothing, I make no money. But if I find something, I can make $500,000.
Yep.
Hello.
You're incentivizing. But to your point, though, bro. To your point, you look at companies like Chrysler. So when Chrysler grew really big, and it was this behemoth, Lee Iacocca came in, and he saw the same thing that you're seeing, like with the city, and he said, "You know what? I'm going to make a mirror image of this company over here, and I'm going to draw from my best people in this other building." And if I can run it from this other building over here, whoever's left in that building is done. That's exactly what he did.
Well, that's what Elon did at Twitter, bro.
And I was going to say, and Elon just said this the other night. He goes, for one of his contracts with the government, they only gave him a fourth of the bid. The other 75% went to like Northrop Grumman or some other company. I don't want to get sued, but it's another government agency. There was no measurable deliverable. He goes, and the deliverable was this. We had to transport the rocket ships from here to here, right? And he goes, we did it like some 15 times. Do you know how much the other government agency did it? He goes, not even once. So they made 75% of the revenue off that contract and didn't do a single deliverable.
It's cost plus.
Yeah, we're not going to get too far in the weeds here, but we have some other conversations we can have
I
offline
think,
about the
in terms of, like,
inefficiencies
the
of
city-
government. But there are positives to government, and I tell people that. Look, I am, an independent. I don't like to talk about politics generally. I think everyone should make their own decisions. They should do their own research, and they should vote the way that they want to vote, because that's what the United States of America is. It is a democracy. But I will tell you this, to Larry's point, it doesn't mean we get to sit back and let the government do our jobs for us. Yeah. We got to get out and get after it. If you don't like homelessness, what can I do? Who can I reach out to? Can I reach out to a guy like Larry? What programs is he putting in place? How can I support and be a help for things that I don't like? I think that's the approach that people should be taking, working with effective elected officials to essentially make a difference. Let's move on to infrastructure. So when you talk about infrastructure, again, we can start at the federal level, Larry, which is, jobs, transportation, just infrastructure in general, energy, all those things. What are you sort of targeting here in San Diego when it comes to infrastructure? What areas of opportunity are you seeing as we exist now and then moving forward?
Yeah, so one of my strengths is being able to just prioritize and maybe taking a little bit of emotion, just not out of it completely, but toning that down, volume down, and more up on the logic side of that. So on the infrastructure part, it's about safety of the people first. And I know, we talk about safety as one of my issues, but safety as regards to the infrastructure is huge. It's about the safe drinking water through our water system. It's about a road system that people don't crash and die because they were misdesigned, or there's flaws there. There's street lights out, and so there's more violent crime in that area, or there's no sidewalk in a certain area.
Do you think that civilians take infrastructure for granted from the government?
Sure, but
because I do think that is one of the upsides. The government does maintain our roads.
That's what they do. That's
supposed
what
to,
they're
yeah.
supposed to
That's
be
what
there
they're
for.
supposed to do.
we shouldn't even be having this conversation right now,
Provide
right?
infrastructure.
Right.
That's it.
But the problem a lot of times is like when we have our car, your car has a smell in it, and you just don't notice the smell because you're in the car every single day until it just gets overwhelming. And then you're like, holy shit, I got to get a new car.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of like, I think, what happens when we're living in the city. You just get so accustomed to it until it becomes like a brake that's going to go out and starts to like whine really loud until you finally change the brake.
Assimilation, bro. We're humans.
But,
Question, Greg, you have not been as vocal in this conversation.
Correct.
You were born in Canada.
Yep.
You lived in Tampa.
Yep.
You have a unique perspective on politics because Tampa, Florida has unique politics, right? So coming here to San Diego, being in Florida, thinking you were on a certain part of the line.
Yeah.
Coming over here, seeing how things are run different in California. Do you have a question for Larry about something that you kind of want to see, especially us being in real estate and being developers and doing what we do? More sort of like, because Ant and I have been here for a long time. So